Hiya, my name is Jay and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be working through our second ever tutorial. Our goal for today is to learn how to build simple but effective moats and riverbanks. This is a more intermediate tutorial and makes use of the base knowledge that we've worked through in our previous beginner rock tutorial, so do check that out if you haven't already. In any case, we will quickly run through the information that we've covered beforehand, just so that you do have the base information that you need to kind of follow along with the tutorial. So first off, we're going to run through our rocks. Here are all the rocks available to us, numbered accordingly. This includes all the main rocks plus cladding and pillars. And here we have the categories that I've broken the rocks down into. These are our base rocks, which will provide us with the main structure and body of any formations we make. Our flat rocks, which will allow us to create flat, clean surfaces. Our miscellaneous rocks, which just kind of provide additional texture. Our small rocks, which are pretty self-explanatory. And our cladding, our big flat pieces. Today, for this particular tutorial, we're going to be mainly making use of the flat rocks, the cladding, and some of our base rocks, with the other types added here and there for a little bit of added interest and to kind of round out our various builds. Firstly, let's get to know the different techniques that we're going to be making use of today. Here we're going to start off with my personal favorite rock once again, rock number 4, which is our big flat rock. This is going to be the main rock that we use today. And let's run through the keys that we'll be using, our hotkeys. So the main key we're going to be using to rotate our rocks is the Z key, which you can just hold down and move your mouse to rotate any of your rocks. You can then press the shift key and hold that down to raise and lower any rocks that you're using. And you can click X to do finer movements around different axes. That's a bit more advanced and we're not going to be using much of that today. But as we go along, you'll kind of get used to using the Z and shift keys quite naturally because they're going to be your best friend when it comes to making realistic rock formations. So this first rock, our big flat rock, as you can see, has multiple sides with multiple different textures. All of these are useful in different situations. There are several clean, sharp edges along this rock, and there is one long, bumpy edge. To create an edge for our rivers and moats, we can raise this flat rock to just above ground level at the edge. Now that our top layer is in place, let's go through our techniques for lining the walls of this cliffside. These are all techniques that will come in really handy when we start working on our riverbanks and our moats. So first off, we can use our large base rock just to add a bit of bumpiness and body, but using cladding with the align to surface option turned on is going to be your best bet for covering large areas of wall very easily. Use the shift key to sink it slightly into the wall for an added kind of smoothness to it, as the cladding then is able to blend in with the wall and with each other. And as always with rocks, remember to rotate regularly. It really does help with the realism, and at the end it is going to be so worth it just using that small motion to produce a much more realistic result. And now on the cliff tops, we can also use that similar technique of using the cladding and sinking it a little bit into the ground, and that creates an irregular boundary between the rock and the soil, which you can then smooth out with the rock terrain paint tool. Now let's make use of these techniques. First, we're going to start by making a moat. These are great for a variety of different habitat types and allows you to have a great view of the animals while not compromising safety. So first we're going to build the actual moat by using the terrain stamp tool. Select the size you're happy with a decent enough depth. Click the minus icon to allow you to dig out soil, and use the X key to open up your fine movements menu and start digging out your moat. Next, we can go in with the same flat rock on the top edge, once again using the similar techniques we talked about earlier, and then we're going to use our base rocks and cladding to line the walls just like we did earlier. We're going to repeat for the other side, and we're going to add in some small rocks to add some detail and texture. We can paint in our rock and soil with the terrain paint tool. Following this, we can also run a path along the edge where, a path would naturally be, along with a simple fence. And there you have it. We have a classic moat which will work for most habitat animals, and to make it look just a bit more realistic, of course, we can add in water into the bottom, and we can add foliage to really complete the moat. To create a moat with one very sharp artificial edge, we can first put together this edge structure away from the moat itself. For me personally, my go-to pieces for this, I take 2 of the wooden pieces, can be any of the wooden pieces, and connect them at a 45-degree angle. This is done using the X key once again, selecting the 45-degree angle snap and just rotating the piece in place to allow for a very seamless look when it comes to this particular structure. Following that, we can just add on a bit of a fence on top. We can lengthen some pieces if need be, add in a few more wooden beams to make it look a bit more natural. Now that we do have this structure, we can then line it up with the path and sink it right down so that the top of the structure lines up perfectly with the level of the path. We're going to then duplicate it so that it creates a long row of our fence/moat structure right across the path, and we're going to sink down any rocks that stick out, and there we have it. We have a very effective, very simple moat structure, so that we have one very sharp edge and one naturalistic edge. Obviously you can have 2 sharp edges, you can have 2 naturalistic edges. It's entirely up to you, and very much depends on what kind of habitat you're building. Now let's have a look at our river. First, to dig out our river, we're going to lower the terrain to the appropriate level. Any level is fine depending on what sort of river you like. Obviously, the deeper you dig, the more work you're going to have to do to make the sides look realistic. And then we're going to use the flatten to foundation tool to kind of flatten out that bottom base and create the shape of the river. Here I'm going to dig out just a curved section of a river, and it's going to have one rocky edge and one smooth edge, just to show you the different effects you can achieve with this kind of system. Once you've dug out the river, you can then paint the whole area with the rock and soil terrain paint along with the sand terrain paint. Make sure to alternate between the coarse and smooth textures of each paint to prevent too much uniformity, because this is going to create a very artificial look, which you really don't want in a situation like this. Once you've painted down the area, fill in the water and then we can get started on adding in our rocks. To start our rocky side of the riverbank, we're going to use our large base rock to build up some body. You should note though that this large base rock does have a very distinct top texture, where there's a singular line that kind of runs down the middle. So use it sparingly, because if you use a lot of them together, you can tell very easily that it is the same rock. And definitely always rotate your rocks. That's kind of the take-home message from this episode. Always rotate your rocks. Our medium base rock is also great for building up the edge of this rocky riverbank. A great thing to do is to use the angled, long, flat rock that you're going to see on screen, because that is great for making it look like you're looking at different layers of stratified rock along the riverbank, which I think is a very cool effect and works in a lot of different situations. Using cladding once again on the top, we can just blend out the edges of all these rocks with the rock and soil around it. And then we're going to use some flat rocks in a similar technique that we use with our moat. With some final small rocks we can just dot around. We're going to really flesh out this riverbank. As a final touch, we're just going to add some much needed foliage. I'm going to put in some reeds, a marilla tree, and there we have it. We are done. As you can see, as you go and learn these different rock techniques, and as we go through all the different uses for them, you're going to start picking up these techniques quite easily, and they're going to become quite second nature for you. I do hope you have all found this tutorial helpful. If you have any feedback, please do leave it in the comments below. More content will be coming out relatively soon. I do hope again that you've all enjoyed this. Please do subscribe for more similar content. Remember to always rotate your rocks, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!